and that is our favorite storylines through the years. Why we got a wrestling podcast? Why are we wrestling fans?
Because of the storylines.
Exactly. I would much rather have a 10 out of 10 storyline than a 5-star match.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can get away with a lot of crap in the ring as long as that story's there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I still appreciate the 5-star matches for no reason. Love those. Like we were just talking about Jey Uso getting fed to Braun Breaker. Just hope it's a good match.
Right.
We know it's going to happen.
Right.
Just hope it's a good match. It's like the Cody AJ thing. When AJ was the first one to take on Cody after his belt, we knew AJ was getting fed to this dude.
Yeah.
We just hoped it would have been a little bit better.
I mean, I thought the matches were pretty good.
It was great matches, but it wasn't a good enough match for us not to get over the hurt.
We weren't surprised.
Yeah.
Right.
My number 5 is the original NWO, the Scott Hall invasion. You didn't know it was going to happen every week. I was 11 years old. I didn't know what was real. I remember when they were on Universal Studios lot and they threw Rey Mysterio into the production booth or into the production truck. And it was so real and so unheard of and new that the neighbors of Universal Studios actually called the police. So the responders that were on TV were actually called by people in the neighborhood. So to find that out years later, and just, I mean, of course it got absolutely ludicrous and they had 1 million members, and the payoff match between Sting and Hogan was not what we hoped it would be whatsoever. But that original, probably like first 4 months of the NWO, like from like June 96 to like the end of 96, just perfect.
Yeah. I got to go back and watch some of those. Cause,
it holds up to this day, man. I'm watching it now, and I mean, you see some cheesiness as looking at it through adult eyes as opposed to when you were a kid, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But man, Bischoff had lightning in a bottle there for a very short period of time. Like, he let it go quick.
Yeah.
It got ridiculous. When you're like, oh, he's in the NWO now? All right.
Right.
Or you'd watch a Nitro and they're like, he got put in NWO in Japan over the weekend. You're like, come on. I didn't even see him get his shirt. Like, pfft.
Yeah.
And you love the WCW diehards like DDP and Sting that were holding out. They're like, I'm not ever joining NWO. So, they broke up the Steiner brothers.
Yep.
I do talking a lot about Braun. You know, the NWO broke up the Steiner brothers for good. They never got back. They never found that. Big Papa Pump just went off on his own after that.
Dude. Yeah, the rest is history. I don't know if you saw the documentary. They made a good one about him.
Number 4 on my list is the Bloodline. I've thoroughly enjoyed wrestling with the Bloodline as the main storyline. I think it saved wrestling through a weird period. I think it brought WWE back on top when some people were deferring to AEW, me being one of those. I think it really ushered in, this is the storyline I think we're all going to think about when we think about the transition from McMahon to Helmsley. Mm-hmm. Or Levesque. You know, I guess he's Paul Levesque these days. And
Mr. H.
Mr. H. I like that. I like that a lot. Mr. H. But I've thoroughly enjoyed the storyline. Anytime it loses steam, something happens and it brings me right back in. Like, I was completely over this storyline, and then Jacob Fatu debuted, and I was like, all right, here we go. Thoroughly loved the story arc of Sami Zayn. Jay, they truly built a new star in Jey Uso with this. Jimmy had to fall to the wayside, unfortunately, but I've thoroughly enjoyed this storyline, and it has made everyone appreciate and see, acknowledge the true amazing main event guy Roman Reigns is. Because, yeah, we loved him in the Shield, but he could not find his footing after that. He kept the Shield music and get up, and we still were like, no. And he was built to be the tribal chief. So that's my number 4, the Bloodline. My number 3 is the introduction of Kane, the Brothers of Destruction. That whole storyline. Talk about Hell in a Cell. We've had a very Hell in a Cell heavy episode this week, but when Kane debuted, obviously he won the match for my beloved Shawn Michaels, so I was immediately a fan. But to lay that groundwork of this character that we all loved and has been established for so long, Undertaker, to give him this new element of he burned his brother alive, and this poor brother has been locked in an insane asylum for the last however long. And he's here in the WWF to get revenge on his brother. Like, it was everything 10-year-old me needed.
Right.
It was amazing. And he ripped off the door of that Hell in a Cell and he attacked Undertaker, and then they had their thing. And then once that ran its course, they team up and they're 3-time tag team champions, Brothers of Destruction. Aside from that terrible match in Saudi Arabia with DX, I've loved everything they've done together.
Yeah.
And they've been intertwined this whole time. And it's just so crazy to think that they built this amazing character that transcended generations, transcended gimmicks. Like, he refreshed himself so much with The Undertaker to American Badass to all of this. And then to duplicate it and do it just as good with Kane, who was also able to change gimmicks and stay fresh throughout the times. One of my favorite incarnations of Kane is Corporate Kane. Like, when he was pretty much like, I'm done in the ring. I'm a suit. Well, let's make that a storyline. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So number 3 is Brothers of Destruction and their storied storyline over the years.
Love that. Love that.
Number 2 is Daniel Bryan versus The Authority. I loved it on so many levels because they gave it to a little guy, which they were not known for doing back then. And B, they listened to the fans. They truly, for the first time in my fandom, came out and said, "You're in charge," and they actually listened to us. They had no intention of pushing Daniel Bryan past the mid-card. He was a novelty. He was the NXT guy that they gave The Miz as his coach. Huge slap in the face to begin with in the first place, which built their feud over the years.
Yeah.
They actually listened. They brought back Batista to win the Royal Rumble, which none of us wanted. Nobody wanted that. I felt so bad for Rey Mysterio because he was number 30 in the Royal Rumble that year. We all wanted Daniel Bryan to come out and win it, and he didn't. He wasn't even in the Rumble. And Rey Mysterio got booed because he was number 30. He should have been cheered. It's Rey Mysterio back in WWE in the Royal Rumble. But we didn't get Daniel Bryan. So they built that up. Bryan winning the title at SummerSlam 2013. He and then Triple H pedigreeing him. And then showing that whole authority role. He handpicked Randy Orton to be his champ. It was great. It was Triple H stepping into that Vince role a little bit, which I liked seeing a little bit of. And it made all these old heads the bad guys. And I loved that. Because I wanted to hate Batista when he came back. I didn't want him in 2014 WWE. I didn't want that. But I want Daniel Bryan to beat him. So I just thought they played it great. And then when they finally decided to give us what the fans wanted, they made him overcome so many obstacles. Like the way they played Daniel Bryan in 2013 and 2014 is the blueprint for any underdog champion ever. So that's my number 2 is Daniel Bryan taking down Triple H's authority and in turn evolution, I guess. My number 1 of all time, favorite storyline. This was at the height of my fandom, and that's the original D-Generation X coming together when I hated all things Bret Hart and the Hart Foundation. I love that they had put Owen and Bret had reconciled and they were together again fighting Bret gave them that name. He said they're a bunch of degenerates. So they're like D-Generation X. Like when that music hit, I was all for it. I was getting in trouble at school doing the crotch chops. Like I got in trouble. My mom probably hit me the hardest I ever got hit as a kid because I hit her with the crotch chop. Like I to this day remember my mom turning around and just backhanding the crap out of me. But I loved D-Generation X. Like my favorite wrestler became the coolest thing in wrestling. Like they were the only thing that could touch the NWO. Like, oh, you got a cool NWO shirt? Check out my DX shirt. Right. Like, oh, yeah. Like my school banned wrestling shirts.
Wow.
Like, you could not wear wrestling shirts to my middle school for a little while because they got out of hand. But seeing them organically come together, and you didn't really see two people stables back then.
Right.
You know, I mean, I get the China with the 3-part, but you didn't see like they weren't giving her wrestling opportunities at that given point. She was still just the muscle, and they had Rick Rude in there for some weird reason. Then he shows up on Nitro, and the whole thing. But I thoroughly enjoyed Shawn Michaels, European champion. Then he becomes WWE champion. He basically does the finger poke of doom for Triple H. Triple H becomes the European champion. So now they both got gold. They got China watching their back. They're just going out. I will never get that image out of my head of Shawn Michaels with the Canadian flag up his nose at ringside. Like, knowing now what we know, and they were complete, like, he was just on this drug fueled, just rampage, and everyone backstage hated him. Made for great TV.
Yeah.
And I went back and watched the A&E biography on DX, which I highly recommend. And they admit, they're like, well, we got away with everything. They're like, there's some nights we were like, can we get fired tonight? Yeah. And that changed over. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed the second reincarnation of DX. You know, X-Pac joins, New Age Outlaws. Like, Shawn Michaels, I was devastated. Shawn Michaels had to retire when he broke his back and dropped the title to Tyson. And I'm like, we're never going to see this dude again.
Yeah.
But that helped, DX running rampant again helped.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my number one favorite storyline of all time is D-Generation X.
And it's still going because they are still doing their thing.
Still running WWE.
Love it.